YouTube, what's happening? I wanted to do a discussion about a collection of machetes that I have. And these are not all of them. I still have a few more, but these are just a few of the different types of makes and styles and representations of machetes with a couple of different kinds of sheaths. So I did a video back some time ago where I talk about the U.S. Ontario knife being my favorite machete, and it is true. So when you look at all these machetes out here, if I had to go into the woods and cut and cut and cut, there's no doubt about it, I'm going to pick this one up for a lot of reasons. So if we start trying to dive into those reasons and compare it to some of these other ones, I'll give you hopefully some information you can think about if you're trying to pick a machete, and one that's going to work for you, work a long time for you, and be comfortable to use and something you don't mind carrying in the woods and using a long time. So with the Ontario knife being overall approximately 18 inches, it's got the proper weight and balance and handle shape. So when you put this in your hand and you go to start slinging it, by me doing this, the machete feels very connected in my hand, and there's not a lot of extra weight at the tip. There's enough to cut, but not a lot of extra where it puts unwanted torque in the base of this where it feels like it wants to twist it out of your hand. So it's just something that you can do this kind of motion all day long in the woods. Maybe if you're not used to it, you're not going to do it all day long, but once you get accustomed to it, you can do it for a long time and be comfortable doing it all day long. All right, so if we go, and so for instance, this machete weighs, the U.S. Ontario knife weighs, the scale just turned off on me, it weighs 1.24 pounds, so about 1.25 pounds. Here is a relatively inexpensive marbles machete, but overall, you can see similar in length. Now, with this one, the handle's good. The handle's nice, and what I like to call somewhat skinny, because when they're fat, it makes it harder to grip. I did have to put tape around this one because the handles on these are not that good, and they'll actually have a little bit of a recess with the blade where some of the wood sticking out. When you wrap your fingers around it and swing it, the edges of the wood sometimes will dig into your hands, and if you're cutting a lot, before you know it, you'll have a blister on your hand. So I'll put tape around it, and that fixes that. So this machete overall is okay. They come from the factory with a decent edge. These will not be too hard to sharpen. It won't take that long. But when you're swinging this one, it's got a good swing to it. Now this helps with some of your forward momentum when you're chopping. But if you're doing this motion all day long, I can already tell the difference in my hand between this one and the U.S. Ontario knife. That little bit of extra weight forward, when you sling it, causes a little bit of more torque. And I'm not going to say it's going to slip out of your hand, but you can feel it working, especially on the lower part of your hand and the last couple fingers, where it's putting extra force on those, where you're having to maybe strain or grip a little bit harder. The harder you squeeze, the longer you squeeze, the faster your arm's going to get tired. So once again, not a bad machete. If you have to just throw it in the car and need to whack down a couple of branches or chop one tree down, it's going to get the job done. Here's another cheap marbles machete that, once again, the blade from the factory is pretty good. It won't take long to sharpen. This one, compared to the U.S. Ontario knife, is a little bit shorter, maybe 3 inches shorter. So this one is not too bad either. The shorter blade length makes it not so bad here. So when you do this kind of motion, you don't feel like it's going to torque out of your hand. But if you notice, the handle on this one kind of starts skinny and starts to get fat back here, and this one has the tang of the knife is slightly recessed in the handle. That's just because the handle wasn't sanded properly to be exactly flush and smooth with the tang. So you've got these little sharp ridges there. So either sand it down is one option, obviously, or wrap tape around it. And when you wrap tape around it, it's going to fatten the handle up. So depending on your hand size, it may make it where it's not as comfortable to use. All right. So on this end of the table, I've got 3 different Condor machetes. And if you look at the Condor machetes online, they're relatively expensive. Like these two are probably in the $25 give or take range. These Condor machetes now are probably in the 90 to $100+ range now. So here's the first one that I have here, and it's more of a chopping style machete. Good quality if you look, and I'm gonna try to do a close up here so we can talk about this. So if you look at the thickness of the steel, this one's obviously a lot thicker. This one's thinner. That's the way the thickness of these Condor machetes is the way both of these other ones are too. So you've got a lot of thickness here, so it's going to give you some weight when you want to chop, which is going to be good. The first issue that this machete has for me, as far as the fit and finish, is excellent. But the machete's handle towards the back starts to flare out just a tiny bit and get a little bit fatter. So if you're doing this all day long, I can already kind of feel it a little bit, knowing that this is going to start to work itself, in your hand a little bit, where you're going to lose some grip. And the way this is sanded very nice and smooth, but it's almost too smooth. Maybe if your hand gets sweaty, it may help you. But just doing this, I can feel the handle in my hand. I'm exaggerating it, but it's shifting a little bit back and forth. So once again, not a machete you're going to want to use all day long chopping over and over and over. I'm not saying you can't get used to it and develop a symbiotic relationship with it where you can chop all day, but I just don't think it's going to be the one you're going to want to chop with all day. But it's still a really, really good machete as far as the fit and finish and the quality. Another Condor machete, a little bit more typical of your machete kind of look and overall style. If we hold it next to the U.S. Ontario knife, a little bit shorter. It's got decent weight going forward. The blades on these Condors, when they come out of the box, they are pretty sharp. But once again, when I showed you how thick the steel was, well, when they get down here, you're kind of getting into that type of thing where they make the edge instead of this type of thing. Not saying that you can't work this down and make it sharper, but you have to do a lot of work to get it there. So this handle on this one, in terms of how it gets fat near the bottom, is even more pronounced than this handle. So once again, when I'm doing this motion, I can already feel it where it's putting strain on these two fingers here. Now you do have this little bulb that curls down on the bottom. It's kind of giving you a little bit of a hold, because if this thing wasn't here and you were doing this, you'd almost like this machete wanted to slip right in your hand, unless you have this string on your hand. But still, even if you have the string on and it slips, all the string's going to do is just cause you not to lose it out in front of you. It's still going to constantly slip in your hand, which is going to be annoying. So once again, nice quality machete, but I don't know if this is your all-day chopper. And then the last one I have, kind of a really, really skinny design machete by Condor. This one's pretty sharp. But once again, the super thick blade on top. And this one has, obviously with the length it has, it's going to have the distribution of weight going forward. And this one is the most pronounced on the handle of either of the other two Condors in terms of how thick and wide it gets at the base. So this one, not comfortable at all. I can tell you right now that I don't want to use this thing I don't even want to use it for 10 minutes chopping. I just bought it to kind of just look at it and study it and see how well they would work, just some testing. So once again, nice quality machetes, but as far as a design that makes it functional to use for extended use and comfort, I don't think any of these Condor machetes really possess that quality. Not nearly like this. I mean, as soon as I picked this up, I mean, it's just, it's just perfect. Now, on the other end, I think they call this a cane knife or a cane type machete. Yeah, cane knife is what they call it, with a hook on it. I have sharpened this one pretty good with the file. I did a video about using a file, how to sharpen a machete. I've worked this one down. It's really sharp now. It can get even sharper. This one is actually pretty good. Even though it has a flare here at the front and a flare here at the back, it's got enough in the middle where it's skinny enough for your hand. And it's made out of this plastic resin where when you grip it, you've got grip to the machete, and there's no sharp or bad edges on it where it feels weird. This is actually a pretty good machete. I've done quite a bit of chopping with this. One of the issues with this machete is the hook there. Now, if you're stopping somewhere and you want to hang it on a branch, yeah, that's nice. But the problem with this type of machete, and I can't remember the other machete it's a really expensive one that they have online, you see, and it's got a really pronounced kind of hook. And I know they're maybe saying, okay, you can kind of do a back cut or a back slice with it. But for me, where I'm at, we have lots and lots and lots of briars. And so what happens is you take your machete and you swing it into the briars to cut, and then when you go to pull it out, this hook snags on everything. So you're moving it and twisting and pulling out instead of just chop, pull, you're chopping, it's tangled up. Let me get it out, chop, tangled up. So I'm not a big fan of that hook. But I'll still use this one from time to time and get the job done. But it's not nearly as good as this one for everyday, all-day functional use. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on with all these machetes, and something that is part of the functional process of a machete, is how you carry it. And I did a little video on this, but this machete came with a similar sheath like this one did. It was canvas and it wasn't nearly the quality, but I bought this aftermarket sheath, and the thing I like about it is when I put it in there, it goes all the way to the top of the handle. So the machete's completely in there. Now I just add a leather strap here, and then when I go in the woods, I can throw this thing on my back like this, and it's out of the way. And now when I want to get my machete, I just pull it out. I'm ready to go. Actually, I turned this on. I need to go like this. There we go. I knew it didn't feel right. Yep, so now the opening is on the outside. I had it tucked to the inside. So now you're chopping with the machete. You're done. You don't want to mess with it. Almost like a shoulder holster. Just put it back in. Boom. Tuck it behind your back. You move wherever you're moving. You've got your hands. When you want to duck down low and squat underneath a branch, if you have this loop here attached to your belt, when you squat down, sometimes the tip of this thing will bottom out in the dirt, and this thing kind of pokes you in the side. But with this, when it's like this, and if you have to crawl through some aggravating mess or get down low through something that you're not going to cut, you can simply just kind of hold the machete like this for a minute. It just gives you a lot of flexibility to keep the machete where it needs to be or where it doesn't need to be. And when you need to access it, tip it forward, pull it out, chop, 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 whatever you want to do, and then right back in, boom. And then you're back going. Now, if we compare that to the sheath that came with this parang machete, all right, let's just say we have this thing on our belt, okay? So now we're done chopping. So now I gotta open this up, hope it stays there without catching back on the Velcro. Maybe not, I don't use it enough. So without, cutting myself, I gotta spread this apart, lay this down, push this in here, move this upper one back, fold it over, okay, boom. Now it's all back in the machete. Now when you want to get it out, undo these, which is going to come out a lot easier, but you're ready. But I think you can see in that scenario how aggravating it would be every time you want to put the machete down or not have it in your hands. Maybe if you're standing near a tree, you whack it, stick it in a tree. But if you need to walk and you don't have the option of putting your machete down and you need to kind of holster it or sheath it, that's going to get really old and aggravating fast. Same thing with these condor sheaths. So they actually have a tab on the back here that I've moved out of the way because it's such a pain in the butt. So you've got the tab up here. So you kind of got to do the same thing. You got to tuck it in. And now well, this is in the way. If I just started pushing or not paying attention, I'm actually cutting to the leather. So I got to move it, push it down, tuck it in. And it's seeing pretty good, but it's still kind of floppy. And I can always take this one and secure it even better. But then when I'm ready to get back to it, I've got to open this one, open this one. This machete is a little bit better with the sheath in terms of it's just a slide-in machete sheath. Boom, it's there. But the bad part is is it doesn't cover up the handle, so you can get some of that action. Now, I'm not saying this one won't do that, because it will, but the handle's just tucked in better where it's just more out of the way. I like the handle being partially and mostly covered up for the scenario of carrying it. So once again, not too bad, but you know, if we give this one a little bit of a thumbs up because of the design of the sheath, which makes removal and putting it back in very easily. The machete, as far as a cutter all day, we talked about that, not really. And then we go back to the final machete, and it's got that same kind of design where you've got a back or a first tab downward on the blade, then you've got a second tab. So I'll remove it and put it out of the way. But once again, you've got to put the machete in. Be careful as you slide it forward to get this one out of the way so you don't cut it. Lay your machete in the groove, slide it forward, lock it down, and it's in there. It's still going to jiggle a little bit. But once again, imagine doing that process every time you want to get the machete out. And if you're chopping a lot, just in my experience, and I have done a lot of chopping. So once again, when I was a younger fella, I did surveying. And when you're a surveyor, some days you can literally spend all day long doing nothing but what surveyors call cutting line. So some days I would cut 1,000 or 2,000 feet straight in straight lines, just cutting through the woods all day long. And you can do that literally for weeks or even months until you got your property set up. So that meant a lot of cutting. So if some of this information is helpful to you, you know, I'm sure there are other people out there that have got different experiences and have used different machetes, and maybe they've used the U.S. Ontario knife and hate it and would prefer one that's like this type of, this style of condor machete. If I can get it out of the sheath here. Sometimes they're aggravating to get out. Something that looks like this. Totally applicable. But as I look at this particular layout in front of me, which is a pretty decent representation of a lot of the styles of machetes out there, I know if I've got to go run into the woods and do some cutting, and I know it's going to be somewhat involved, and I want to get my task accomplished effectively and do it with the least amount of energy and wear and tear on me, there's no doubt about it. I'm going to grab this machete every single time. So once again, guys, really good machete. These are not bad machetes, but I'm just trying to give you some information to think about. If for some reason you're getting ready to get into the task of, I got some property and I want to clear it out, do yourself a favor and get yourself a quality, applicable machete so it's effective for cutting, it's effective in your hand, so you don't tire yourself out, you don't waste effort trying to chop, and every time you chop, you're making good progress with the least amount of effort and wear and tear on your arms, hands, whatever. Even if you're wearing gloves, you can have issues in terms of how the handle's shaped. So, yeah, the handle's almost as important as how the blade is for comfort and stability in the hand. All right, well, anyway, that's it. Just wanted to give some thoughts on a stack of machetes, and I'll do another one. All right, have a good day.